so we've got some people who are, who know Repower, and we've got some people who don't know Repower. So I'm going to try and thread the needle of the perfect middle ground. And I'll probably get questions from either side at the end, because I probably won't do the perfect job for that, but I'll do the best I can. And if you don't know much about Repower, there's a full introduction for Repower as another town hall that we did back in July. That is on YouTube in the same format as this. So you might want to listen to that as well, because this is kind of version 2, which is a step up almost with some extra information. So you don't need to do that. Okay, so here's my agenda. I'm going to try and get this done in, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes or so. We'll give a quick, part of the reason for this meeting is that we had an AGM, our first AGM. And so I wanted to give those of you who are members or associate members an update on that. So we'll have a quick look at that, including looking back over the last 14 months since our inception and what we have achieved together. We'll look at the Mornington Peninsula emissions, the latest snapshot view, and any change in the last couple of years. As a reminder, or for some of you it'll be new, we're going to give you an overview of our approach to community decarbonisation and what we're doing. We're going to look at the latest community survey, make sure that you've had a chance to complete that. And then we're going to look at some new dashboards, some new programs that we're launching in these weeks, previous and today and next week, new merchandise, and then we'll talk about some of the things that we need some help with. So that's the plan for what we're going to cover. And of course, any questions you want at the end is fine. So Lisa, I'll just ignore the chat. Is that all right? And you jump in if you need me to. Okay, so we had our AGM, and if for some of you may not know about this, but what we do is we have Repower is a whole group across the peninsula, and we have it split up like almost like a hub and spoke model, really, where the hub is the core team, and the core team are really a strategic leadership team who are there to help furnish and make it easy for the postcode groups. We call them satellite groups, where we have one satellite group for every postcode, so ultimately be around 24 or 20 to 24, depending. And our aim as the core team is to do everything we possibly can to make those postcode groups as successful as possible. And so we'll talk more about that in a minute, what that looks like. But in essence, that's why you've got a group on the left, which kind of form that strategic core team. And that includes myself, Warwick, Lisa, who you've met, Belinda's the secretary. She's not here, I don't think, yet. Sharon should be joining us, and Nina is not able to make it tonight. And then we've got satellite group representatives. So the model is that the core team has 4 satellite group representatives out of the 20 or so. If we had 20, I think we've got about 7 or 8 at the moment. And our aim is to have about 20. So the aim is that those 20 would be represented by 4 satellite group representatives, 1 for each quadrant of the peninsula. And so we currently have 3, and we'll be looking for a 4th as we build. And ultimately, we'd like a group in the core team that sort of add those 2 things together. We'd like ultimately a group of about 12 people, depending on workload. So I'll show you another slide later on that shows you that model in more detail. For those of you who know about Repower, let me give you a little bit of an update about what we've achieved for the last 14 months. And there's a bit of detail in here, but I'll go fast just so you can get a sense of the work that we've been doing together. Because there's about 2,600 hours of volunteer time that's been put in collectively across the peninsula to Repower over the last 14 months, which is a really exciting commitment. The first thing is that we managed right in the early stages, to navigate and negotiate a formal memorandum of understanding with the council. So we are effectively the community engagement representation of the council. The council have a climate emergency plan. Repower is the community engagement mechanism to bring that to life around energy. For those of you who don't know much about Repower, we're focused on stationary energy and reducing emissions from stationary energy. And we've developed and refined a postcode dashboard concept. We're going to talk about that in more detail tonight, so hold your breath if you're not sure what that means. We'll look at it later, but that's kind of part of our secret sauce to help make emissions more relevant at a local level. We've developed a series of propositions. We did a huge amount of research. A lot of the time that we spent over the last year has been researching and understanding. Stephen on this call is an energy legend. You've been in the space for years. When all of us started, including myself, about 14 months ago, we were all virtually beginners with very little knowledge at all, but just passion for emissions reduction. So we've been on this huge learning curve, and it's part of the joy that we've all had in it, and as a group, all learning together. We launched a new website, if you haven't seen it, repowermornpen.org.au, and we're all over social media. We developed this satellite group model, which we'll talk about at the postcode level. We've developed a respected relationship with United Energy. A couple of people in the group have been very fervent with making sure that relationship stands up, and we've been talking to executives and community engagement teams, and so we've got a good model there. We've researched all sorts of things like retail energy providers, virtual energy networks, energy efficiency, solar providers, and some of those things we'll talk about launching programs tonight, and others you'll see going forwards we'll be doing more of that. We've met businesses and groups, and we've looked at what are called environment upgrade finance solutions, which we'll be launching a partnership with over the near future. We've partnered with the Yarra Energy Foundation. The Flinders Group, the Flinders Zero Carbon Community, is one of the satellite groups of Repower, and they've done a community battery feasibility for Flinders electorate. So we'll hear more about that as we go over the months to come. We've worked with Mornington Peninsula on comms, got that out. If you have not had your rates notice recently, and then you won't know that Repower is in every single rate notice across the peninsula with a flyer, every business, every household, care of the council and our partnership with them. And so that's driven quite a bit of uptake in interest in the last couple of weeks, and will do going forward for next month. We've launched some programs. We'll talk more about that. We've researched case study testimonials. We've got stories from different people. We've met with federal and state politicians to lobby for energy system policy changes, and we've got lots more to do on that front. So if you're passionate about that, then we'd love you engaged. We're supported by a group called Uncommon Folk, who run a big farm and a philanthropic trust up in Mainridge. We manage some professional financial accounts, care of our lovely treasurer, Lisa. We've run 2 community surveys. The second one is out right now, and that's really important because that's about gauging community insight, community opinion about how we should do. Ultimately, if we are a community engagement group and team, then we want to represent the community and inspire the community, so we need to understand what the community feels. We've run 2 town halls and 3 community meetings. We've attended lots of fairs and markets. We've won 2 climate action grants from the council for 15,000, which isn't a huge amount, but it's got us started. We've got our new name, we've got a new branding, and we've got a trademark for Repower. We estimate that before the rates notice anyway, our brand had reached 5,000. Now it probably reached over 100,000 in the last couple of weeks. We've got 400 subscribers or so on our database, but that's going out rapidly. Facebook group members, postcode satellite groups, about 8. And then we've got 50 different members, and we'd love some more because that really helps us with our donations. We've got about 2,600 volunteer hours, as I mentioned. We've met over 40 times online, 4 times physically, and we've built a sort of medium-term strategy, which we don't take many people through because it's quite detailed, but we have a full strategy behind exactly what we're doing and when, or how, and the when, it depends on our volunteer army and how much time we have. So if you're ever keen to understand the strategy behind what you're seeing, then give one of us a call and we'll take you through it. So part of the reality of where we're at the moment is that we don't necessarily know the number of community actions taken because we don't have a way of modeling that, and we don't necessarily know the amount of emissions reductions that we've had an impact on. That's quite hard to measure. We've got some ways of doing that going forwards, but we'll talk about that in more detail if you've got questions on that. Anyway, that's just a quick summary of the last 14 months. It's been a joy and a privilege to be part of it with all the team and all those in the satellite groups. So if you have been part of that, I guess my first point is to say thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being part of this exciting movement. And if you're new, then we want to make sure that we double at least the impact over the next 12 months, and we'd love to help you get involved. So in that frame, let's move forward to emissions. So when we started, this is the only data that we had really, which was the 2018 municipal emissions data from the Mornington Peninsula. It was created by a group called Ironbark Sustainability. It's the snapshot tool. There's a data set like this for every LGA, local government area in the whole of the country. And we are about just over 2.1 million tons of CO2 emissions equivalent per year. You can see that 57% of that was electricity, 16% gas, 23% transport, 3% waste, and there's a whole series of sub-segments underneath that. If we forward wind to 2020, 2021, we see some shifts. Well, the first is that there's a 9.9% reduction in total emissions in that time. Now, I'm not saying in any way or form that we are responsible for that. We might be responsible for a tiny percentage of that because we've only been going for 12 months. But the good news is that there's already nearly a 10% reduction of emissions on the peninsula. Now, it's likely that some of that is due to COVID. We will really only know when we see the next set at the in another 6 or 9 months or so. But there are some other changes there. And what's interesting is that electricity has grown. It was 57, it's now 61. And gas has gone down, which is good. And transport's gone down, which is good, which maybe transport's gone down because of COVID. But electricity has gone up as a percentage of total emissions. Now, there's a good reason for that, because when we think about electrification and we think about what we are trying to do, this energy transition, the first thing we're trying to do is to stop people burning fossil fuels. And the big one to stop burning, of course, is gas. And the second big one to stop burning, not in any particular order, is coal. We don't want coal burnt to produce electricity, and we don't want gas coming directly to our homes. Any fossil fuels and then of course, petrol and diesel. And so in the process of moving away from gas, if a home gets rid of gas like we have, you have to have more electricity. If you move away from petrol, diesel cars, you move to electric car, which means you need more electricity. Now, hopefully that electricity is not carbonized electricity from coal generation. It's using solar on your roof, or it's using a decarbonized or a renewable energy supply from a renewable retailer. But ultimately, we should start to see gas go down, transport go down, and electricity go up. So we've already seen that in this first 2-year change, which is an exciting trend that we should start to see more of. Ultimately, to do this, we will need to do this full electrification of any suburb. We'll need 2 to 3 times the amount of electricity in terms of kilowatt hours that we normally, that we had, say, 2 years ago before this transition started. We're going to need 2 to 3 times more by 2030. Now, we don't want that to come from coal-generated, centrally produced power plants. We want that to come from roofs and decentralized energy generation of people's roofs and solar farms and wind farms in the local area. Keep it local, generate it local, use it local, trade it local. We'll talk more about that later. The average household, if you're not sure, on the Mornington Peninsula uses roughly about 5 tons of CO2 equivalent by burning petrol and diesel in their cars. They emit about 3 tons CO2 equivalent from burning gas. And of course, if you don't have gas, then you don't burn that. And then they emit about 5 tons of CO2 equivalent for electricity. And so obviously, the less gas that you have, the more electricity you have. If you're buying it from the grid for a standard retailer, then your household emissions from electricity will be higher than that. But that just gives you a sense that the average household has around 13 tons CO2 emissions per year. Now, if you're a big household, you can double it. If you're a smaller household, it's probably around 10. And we are more than the average household in Australia. We're a wealthier region, so we have bigger houses, so we tend to burn more fossil fuels. But in essence, the goal, of course, is to break down that 1.9 million tons down to households and small businesses. And that's how ultimately we decarbonize, is household by household, business by business. Okay, so let's have a look at what that really looks like. How do we go about doing that then? That sounds like a huge prospect, considering there are 80,000 households, maybe 10,000 small businesses on the peninsula. What does it look like? Well, a simplified process might look like this, and this is super simplified, and hopefully you can all get it. The first thing to do in any decarbonization process, is ultimately the cleanest energy is the energy that you don't need. And of course, you don't need energy when you're more efficient. You need less energy when you're more efficient. So the more that people can make their homes energy efficient, their businesses energy efficient, the more energy efficient their cars are, then the less energy they need. And of course, ultimately, if you're buying that from a carbonized grid, then the less emissions that you have. So that's the first thing. And everyone should be working on that. You probably heard the term Australians live in tents, and many houses are really poorly insulated, single glazing, and leak like a sieve. And I can tell you, by having done all that work myself on my own house, that it makes a dramatic difference when you have a high energy efficiency in your house. The second thing to do then is to electrify, get off gas. And that's quite an ask, but it's critical over the next 8 years, is that we all move away from gas. But basically, you are electrifying your home your heating, your hot water, your cooking, and ultimately you're electrifying your transport. Now you might get an e-bike like Warwick has, and started biking around around Mount Martha, getting fit at the same time, which is fantastic. But ultimately, over this next 5 years, 8 years, we're going to move more and more. You're going to see incredible transition and change to the electrification of transport. And so you can be part of that and should be part of that. The third thing, and these, by the way, don't have to happen consequentially. They can happen, together all at once, right, parallel. But it just gives you a sense of kind of the things that you tend to think about first. And then you look at generating renewable energy. Now you can buy that from a renewable energy retailer. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Or preferably, if you can afford to either buy it or lease it or get some finance to finance it for you, you put solar on your own roof. And then you're effectively becoming your own power generator, and you use your own energy. Now, of course, the more efficient your home is, the less you'll need. And the more electrified your home is, the more you'll know how much electricity you will need. And so you'll be able to make sure that your solar is the right size. Fourth is that we then look at storage, because we all know that solar generates loads of power kind of between 10 and 4. And there's a great big peak, and the duck curve, I think they call it. And then there's the prime times, morning and evening, where solar isn't quite so good. There isn't enough there. And so energy storage, whether that's a battery in your home or whether it's an EV, which is really a battery on wheels, 4 or 5 times the size of a home battery, when we're able to do what they call vehicle to home or vehicle to grid connections, ultimately your electric vehicle will become your home energy storage bank, and you'll be able to run your home for 2 to 3 days on your car. So, but that basically means that the demand curve for energy gets shifted because you're storing energy in a battery. Other ways of local energy storage, by the way, are community batteries, like what they're doing in Flinders. And you've just heard Labour government probably announce that if they get re-elected, there'll be 100 new community batteries. Labour government in federal have got 400 community batteries. And so that's all part of energy storage to shift to make sure that solar is captured and used later on in peak times. And then we've got virtual energy networks, where we have the opportunity for people who have more energy than others. So if Warwick's generating more energy than me and I need energy, I could trade with him, and he gets a couple of cents on a kilowatt hour, and I pay less than I would if I bought it off the grid, but I pay him and he makes a couple of cents and I make a saving. And that's called a virtual energy network, and virtual power plants, which you may have heard as well, where you're basically trading your energy as an asset to those around you. So that's the simplified process that we're all trying to transition this community and these postcodes through. Another way to look at that is just looking at it from a way of community engagement. So if we're trying to empower the community and help the community to do that process, then we've kind of think about it in this way. The first is that as a non-profit organization, community organization, we're trying to build awareness. We want to educate on the science. We want to educate on the impact globally and locally of emissions and why it's so important. We want to have make sure we've got local data, and we want to make sure it's really easy for people to take action. So if you look at our website seeks to bring awareness, and all our comms and all our social media, it seeks to bring awareness for those who don't know. So if you didn't know it was easy, then part of the process of this talk and many other talks is to demonstrate this is not difficult. This is a simple transition that we should all make. And here's how you can do it. The second thing, and we're using this postcode, what we call data-centric approach, where we talk, and I'll show you the dashboards and that help. The second thing is consideration. We want to promote and propose, or propose and promote some options for you, give you some costs, the benefits, the subsidies, the grants that are out there, to make it easy for you to consider which heat pump to go with, which solar to go with, which retailer to go with. How do you shift off gas? To give you that moment of consideration, so it becomes easier for you to make a choice, because ultimately you want people in the community to make a choice. And ultimately we want everybody on the peninsula to take action. And there's a series of actions, five fundamental actions that everyone has to take. And we'll cover that in a minute. But we want to make it super simple and easy for everyone in the community to make those actions as fast as possible. And in the process of doing that, and you enjoy doing it and you see the benefits of doing it, you feel good about doing it because you now no longer having a burden on the climate, you are able to talk to your neighbor, talk to your friends, talk to those at the school, and get others to do the same thing. And then we have this kind of community movement where we transition at speed. After all that, and people have taken those actions, of course, what we want to make sure is that the products and services that we're recommending are good, that they're quality, they have good service, good long life cycles, that the retailers or the installers that we're promoting to make it easy for people have good service and can be trusted and will be here for the long term. So that's important because we don't want people investing and then finding something breaks in 6 months' time, and that changes their whole view of, you know, the joy of this transition. And then ultimately loyalty. We want to celebrate, and you could add that as celebration. We want to celebrate the progress that we've made as a community. If we start to see, when we start to see our emissions decline year after year in each postcode, we're going to celebrate that progress because we've done it together. And so you can see that kind of as almost as an emotional and a social journey of empowering community decarbonization that fits with that more sort of root, you know, that more physical view that I gave you a minute ago. That just gives you a sense of how we're thinking about it as a group. The other thing we talked about is these ideas of postcode-based satellite groups. So if you're in Flinders, Red Hills, Toronto, wherever you may be, the idea is that we are trying to have boots on the ground, local volunteers, because that's where relationships are. That's where people have the best relationships. So, you know, if we've got, you know, Michael in Red Hill may have lived there 15 years and he knows a lot of people. And so he's going to have a lot of influence in Red Hill, whereas I'm going to have none because I live in Mount Martha and I've been here 8 years. I just about know my own community, let alone those outside of us. And so the aim of the postcode model is to basically take the whole of the Repower model and plant it locally with local people, and to give them the dashboard and to give them the programs and to help them scale local emissions reduction and to make it easy for you. And we all learn together in the process of doing that. And so we've got a partnership with the council. We've got other energy groups that we're learning from across the country. We've got a lot of learning from a group in Sydney, which is very advanced. And we've got other actors. We work with the distributors, the retailers of energy. We've got investors we're talking to, got local community groups, developers on the peninsula that hold land, that are developing, state government, etc. And all those actors become part of our wider approach for how we're doing this. It's a collaborative approach. You know, there's no point annoying or getting rid of or saying, well, I don't agree with the state government. That's not going to help us. You know, what we need to do is build this collaborative approach towards, you know, joint success where we all do this together and leverage everyone's strengths the best way that we can. Now, we have a survey. If you haven't seen this, we've sent it out on our email trail a couple of times recently, and it's in the rates notice too. And if you run your phone over this, if you haven't filled it in, I'd love you to. We'd love you to. It's a community survey, and it's basically, how can we make it easier for you to switch to renewable energy? And if you put your phone over that QR code, zap it, you'll get to the Google form. Take you 5 minutes or so, maybe less, to fill that in, about 10 questions, and it's all multiple choice. And that'll help us understand how we can help make it easier for people in the community to switch. And if you haven't seen the rates notice, that's what it looks like. It's coming out digitally and in everyone's mailbox if you get it by mail. So if we need to come back to that, I'll come back to that at the end, but I'll shift on now. So we talked about this dashboard. Well, we're releasing version 2 of our dashboard today, and it should be on the website in the next couple of days, hopefully. If you haven't seen it before, let me take you through it briefly. On the left, we start with population. It's slightly out of date. We need to get the 2021 census data in there, but you can only imagine it's grown since then. We look at the dwellings. This is for Mount Martha, 3934. And we've got a total amount of emissions for Mount Martha, about 82,000 tons, based on the 2021 data that we did. Repower has a vision to reduce stationary energy emissions by 70% by 2030. That's our target. It's a target that we believe was beating the science, but now seems to be almost in line with the science because the world's getting further behind. So we're quite passionate about that. And it beats, of course, the current government target, which is around 45%. But it means substantial effort every year. And the longer you leave it, the harder it gets, obviously. The number of solar installs that we had at the end of 2021 was 2,281. individual dwellings with solar on in Mount Martha. And that's an install percentage rate of about 28% of homes in Mount Martha have solar. Now that's changed already dramatically in 10 months, but you'll see in a minute what that looks like going forwards. And the little donut ring in the bottom is basically the amount of roof space that has solar on it. Not the percentage of dwellings, but the percentage of roof space. So although we have 28% of dwellings, we only have 8% of roof space covered. So there's a lot more roof space available for solar. Now, the second part of the dashboard is this, which basically says, what is it going to take to reduce the 82,000 by 70% to get to 25,000 per, over the next 8 years? And what we've done, the calculation we've made is an annualized decline rate. And so it's 12.5% per year. Now, we could do that differently, and we could divide it up by 8 years, but the annualized decline rate means you have the same percentage decline each year. And of course, the first couple of years are bigger declines than the last years. And that's kind of fit because it's easier when you start at the beginning. Like, it's easier to get the solar install from 28 to 50 than it is from 50 to 60, just because of the number of people it's going to take to move across the line who are maybe laggards and don't want to do it. We can reach the early adopters and the mid-stage people, much quicker at the early stages. And so that means that we have to reduce 12.5% per year in Mount Martha, about 10,000 tons in 2022 alone to get there. Now, we have trends happening in every postcode. We have trends of growth, so the growth of houses being built, of course, and some of those are being built electrified, which is great. Some of them are not. Some of them are built with gas, and so they have more emissions coming into the postcode. And then we have other things happening in the postcode where we already have a trend of solar being installed. We've looked at the trend over the last 5 years, and we know that for Mount Martha, we would expect in 2022 about nearly 300 systems to be installed based on trend. And so that has a reduction of emissions. And so you've kind of got this net takeout, more emissions coming in because of population growth, because of resident growth, and then emission takeout because you've got more solar going in and other reasons. And so what we're looking at really is, what do we need to do above trend? What do we need? Repower is not here just to follow the trends, because all our efforts are for nothing if we do, not for nothing, but all our efforts don't really do much. Our efforts are really here to accelerate above trend. And we won't reach minus 10,000 tons with trend. We need to go above it. And so what we calculated is that, just to give you an idea, there's lots of different ways of doing this emissions reduction, but it's equivalent to an extra 664 solar installs in Mount Martha in 2022 alone. So that would mean effectively 200% more solar would need to be installed in Mount Martha to effectively enable us to reduce the 12.5% in 2022. And we'd have a similar calculation for 2023 and 2024 going forwards. And so come January or February, what we'll do is we'll recalculate all this based on the 2022 data, and that will give us a sense of what actually happened in 2022. And then we'll have to recalibrate all the years going forwards and look at what does that mean for 2023. Now, we spent most of this year getting our act together rather than really driving hard in our postcodes. And so I imagine 2023 will be our year, our big year in some of the postcodes where we have big groups running. And the last thing is that if we did manage to install all that, we'd end up with a 40% solar penetration rate, or solar percentage of dwellings, just to give you a sense that, we in effect would need, another 10, 12% more of your road, of the houses on your road with solar on, to give you a sense of what we're aiming for in every street in Mount Martha. And that, of course, is different by postcode, but we have one of these for every postcode, and we'll be putting up the latest ones on the website for all of you to see. So another way of seeing this, which has been super helpful for us, in the core team, and if you have been following Rewiring Australia, or you have read The Big Switch by Saul Griffith, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. Is that they use a couple of graphs that are super helpful to make this simple. This assumes that the average house has about 11 tons. As I mentioned, in Mornington Peninsula, we're about 13 tons. So it's give or take roughly the same. But in essence, a household on the left, the average household, if you're burning fossil fuels to generate the average household uses about just over 100 kilowatt hours of energy per day, whether it's for electricity for your home, whether it's for fueling your cars, whether it's for gas for cooking or water heating, whether it's for space cooling or space heating. You roughly use 100 kilowatt hours of energy use per day. The future goal is that when we all move to electrified house, we will only use a third amount of the energy required, because especially electric vehicles are far more efficient in their energy use than a petrol or a diesel car. And because people will be generating or using local energy, you won't have generation losses. And other things like space heating, when you move from gas to air conditioners, you get 4 times the efficiency, and all these different things that basically mean that across Australia, every household will be using a third of the electricity, sorry, a third of the total energy in the future than it is going to be using right now. Now, the super exciting thing about that is that if that's fully electrified and it's decarbonized, then you will be saving, the average household will be saving $5,400 per year by doing that. And the reason for that is because fossil fuel prices continue to rise. You feel it now, but they're going to continue to rise with inflation and other reasons over time. Whereas renewables and the cost of renewables and cost of batteries are only going to level or go down. And so the gap gets wider and wider and wider over time. But also you're far more efficient. As I mentioned earlier, all of these things you're doing far more efficient with an electrification process than you are with gas or car or diesel or petrol cars. And so that money, $5,400, which was going to Shell or BP or AGL or Origin, which are all foreign-owned companies, all that saving of $5,400 will now be in your pocket. And where will you spend it? You're going to spend it where you live, which means that every household on the peninsula is going to spend more of those savings locally, which means that our economic GDP of this particular area will go up significantly. And so we're investing into our local economies at the same time as electrifying and decarbonizing. I hope that makes sense to you. But that's the super exciting transition that we're going for. It's not just about energy, not just about reducing emissions. It's also about taking back control and having more investment into local communities, using local installers, local retailers, local energy generators, and spending your savings locally, whether it's into the school or into the local library or restaurants or whatever it may be. It'll start to improve the economies locally. The other way of looking at that is to look at that from the type of energy that, or the type of energy, your source that we use. And so you've got the same 100 on the left, the 37 on the right. And we talked about the idea that we've got electric, diesel, petrol, wood, loads of wood on the peninsula, LPG, natural gas, and carbonized electricity on the left, all fossil fuels in the worst case scenario, all moving to green electricity on the right. And that gives you a sense of how we're going from 11 tons average per household to 0 tons per household by 2030. Okay, there's that book, The Big Switch, that I mentioned to you. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend buying it. It's super simple to understand. It is written by an engineer, but he's done it in such a way that I think really anyone could understand it. And it's a very exciting proposition at the end of it. And you'll get to the point where you realize that what we're doing is right at the cutting edge of this transition, which is helping communities to get there. We're nearly there. So I can see some questions there. So we're nearly there. As a reminder, there are 2 bodies of work that we are pushing. One is this idea of everyone has personal actions. Whether you're a household, you're in your own household, you're renting, you're a small business or a community organization, whether that's a winery or a cafe or or a food bank. Ultimately, there's a leader of every single one of those. The parents, the leader of a household, or the individual is, and everyone's got choices to make about the household. There's also a set of actions that we want to do, we haven't got to them yet, which are really community projects, whereby we look at things like solar farms, which Stephen is doing, and we'll talk more about that later. And we've got maybe wind farms in the future, maybe community batteries, which we know we're working on in Flinders, and we'll have more community batteries. And there are projects that we'll need to do across the peninsula where it's more than just the individual's choice. It's 50, 100, 500, 1,000 people getting involved to make that community project a reality that has a much greater marked impact on emissions. If you build a 5 megawatt solar farm and people pull that energy and use it locally, that's going to have a great impact on local emissions. For the moment, let's just look at personal actions again. So over the next 8 years, I mentioned this to you earlier, we all have 5 important choices to switch to. The first is switch to renewable energy. You can actually do this now. Every single one of us can actually move, whether you buy solar or not, you have the choice to change retailers. And if you go to the Greenpeace rating guide that's linked to our website, you'll find the top 10 retailers that are most rated for generating through renewable energy assets. They don't use, or they use minimum amount of coal, and they try. So take Diamond Energy, for example, which are one of the ones that we plan to recommend in the future. Every kilowatt hour that you use and source from them, they will match in generation from local wind farms and solar farms across Victoria, plus 10% also. So you can guarantee that if you're buying from them, that they're pumping the same amount of renewable energy into the grid as you're taking out. So that's just an example. The other way, of course, is that you can put solar on your roof, as we've talked about. Second thing is you've got the important choice to make to switch to electric heating. If you're using gas, whether your gas heater is out of date or not, really what we want you and everyone else to do in the next 8 years is to switch that off and move to electrification. It's far more efficient and it's cheaper for you to heat your energy efficient home with an AC, air conditioning, because of the 4:1, 5:1 ratio air conditioners work at. And it's safer, it's healthier, it's all those things for the environment. And of course, a lot less emissions. Same with hot water heating. Now, again, that's, you may say, yes, but, I've bought these things like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and they've still got some lifetime. That's right. There are 10 million energy appliances in Australia that all have a lifetime. And the problem is that if we allow all those energy appliances and assets to run their natural life, we won't make our emissions reduction ambition. We won't make the 45% by 2030. We won't make the net zero, going further forward. We definitely won't make 70% on the peninsula. And so actually, some of us have to make advanced decisions to say, even though my electric hot water heater has probably got another 10 years, I'm going to cut it off now, or in 2 or 3 years' time. I'm going to take the grant that the government have produced to allow me to switch off my gas hot water and put in an electric heat pump, which is what I just did recently. Put an electric heat pump in and start saving money. And within a couple of years, you will have paid back the extra costs of that electric heat pump because of the benefit of the grant, and you'll be saving money because you won't be buying gas. So we need more and more people to make those choices now or in the next couple of years, not wait 10 years for the natural life cycle of their assets to run out. Same with electric cooking or gas cooking. You've got to get off gas. It's incredibly, more and more research reports about the danger of gas cooking for the home, especially with children in the home. And so we now need to move to electric cooking. Electric induction cooktops are better. They're better for, better for your health. They're, actually the cooking is even better now than we ever had before. And in some cases, the advanced one's much better than gas. So there's actually no reason why we shouldn't do it again. Again, if it's cost, then you take some finance out, or you put it onto your mortgage and you pay it off with 5%. And all of these things you can do that with, just like we've done. And within 5 years, you will be back to actually making full savings, because you would have paid it off within 5 years by the savings that you're making. And from that moment on, you'll be actually net better off by moving to electric quicker. And the last one is electric transport. We talked about that. EVs, EBs, e-bikes, etc., and making choices around that. So those are the 5 big choices that everyone's got to make. And as Repower, we're kind of like a motivational movement to try to encourage people to do that. And we want to put programs in place to help people do that. Okay, so nearly there, the new program launches. So if you've been following us, about 2 weeks ago, we launched the new energy efficiency program with a local partner called Green Moves. They're based around the Bay. They are an energy assessor, energy scorecard, energy audit, local family company, been doing it for 15 years. They're very well known, and they've given us some special rates. And I'll show you on the website in a minute. I'll just go through all this and I'll show you on the website quickly what that looks like. But they have things live now. You can go to our website, you can click on that, and you can ask to talk to Danielle. She'll give you a ring and she'll help you look at your home and how to do that first step that we said, which is make your home more energy efficient. And if you want a scorecard rating so you can see how you're doing, she'll give you that too. Same for businesses. Businesses have the opportunity to save thousands of dollars by making great energy efficiency and energy choices now. And they can work with any business of any size across the peninsula to help them do that. The second thing is that we're launching today, in fact, right now, exciting, after about 9 months of working on this, a Solar My Home, Solar My Business program. And we're starting by partnering with 2 local solar providers. One's called Dunton Solar, which are based in Dramana, and the other is called South Beach Solar, which are based in Mount Martha. It's live on the website now. You can go there and you can click on there and you can put your details in for a quote or for a discussion, and you'll get a ring or a call back within a couple of days, and you can go on your journey. But both of those, there are other retailers and installers, of course, and you can use whoever you wish. But if you want to use a recommended one that we've worked with, we've spent time with, we've had recommendations from many community members, then those are the 2 that we're starting with. The other thing that's important is that Dunton and South Beach have both agreed to what we call is the Repower Community Pledge. So for every kilowatt that they install from a referral from Repower, they will donate $50. So if it's a 10 kilowatt system, they'll donate $500 to our community trust fund. And that community trust fund will be used to be aggregated, and it will be used to pay for solar installations for nonprofits and local community organizations. So the minute we get to about $5,000, we'll be able to build, say, a 5 kilowatt system on a local nonprofit, and all that will be for free for that nonprofit. And so they bought into that community pledge, and that's what we plan to do going forward. So more and more installers and local practitioners and retailers is to try to have a net benefit back for the community out of any recommendations that we make. We will have a renewable energy partner coming soon, so hold your breath. Hopefully, we wanted it today, but it's just going to be another week or 2. And as I said, that's the idea, that you can basically switch your energy retailer to one that you can trust is generating renewable energy at the same rate that you're using it. We will also have a partnership with a business environmental upgrade finance organization. So if you run a small business and you want to upgrade everything, get off gas, upgrade all the things and become net zero, they will help you do that. And you can pay that back through your rates with the council. It's a partnership between the business, between this organization that we're partnering with, and the council. And so that's super exciting for business owners. We will have a partnership for getting off gas. So if you want to get off gas and you want someone to do it, we'll have someone to recommend, hopefully, and to replace that with a heat pump. And then ultimately in the future, we plan to have a virtual power plant provider or virtual energy network provider that we can recommend too. Again, the idea of these are just standard programs that everyone can use in the community if they want to. If they just want to go with something easy, recommended, done for them, just click the button on the website, ring the number, whatever it may be. We've done the work because we've done the research, but it doesn't stop people using whoever they want by virtue of their own research. Almost last but not least, we've got new merchandise. If you want a cap, a t-shirt, a sticker, we've got some live on the website now. And if you click on Get Involved, you can basically, you'll see in that you can basically buy a t-shirt or either of those things there. They're making very little money. It's not really a fundraiser. The purpose of it is to get the message out there because we didn't want to make it too expensive for these things. And so it's really just building the brand and getting people out there and just making sure people understand the message of what we're trying to do as a community organization. So if I know some of the satellite groups have shown interest, and if you're keen, then we'll make sure that Warwick and I will make sure that we get some of these to each of the satellite group next meetings so that you can buy them when we see them. You can also buy them online, as I mentioned, but you have to pay a postage fee. So if you're desperate to get it, do that, or wait for your next satellite group meeting. Lastly, more impact. Well, do we want to do more impact? Do we want to go further? Do we want to have greater emissions impact? Of course we do. Well, those of us who are in it so far do, and those of you who are new, we'd love you to be part of that. But we need more help. We're all working far harder than we had necessarily hoped, although we're all passionate and love it, and we need more help. because we're all really a volunteer army doing this. The first thing is that we need more core group members, people who are passionate about kind of strategically defining a way forward, and that could look like things like running events, running a big town hall, or we've got options going forwards to run a big event at Red Hill, for example. We might have a big trade fair. We need some people to help do that. But there's all sorts of things that we could do if we had a visionary person who loved events, event management, event sort of setting up, and we could get more and more of the community to come and join in and enjoy that. It could even be just a small stall, like we did at the EV stand, and some of you came, but all of that takes time. And if we divide and conquer, it doesn't take much time, but at the moment we don't have enough people, and so it's taking too much time. So if you've got a passion for events, we'd love you to talk to us and let us know, and love you to join us. Equally, PR and social media. I do most of that at the moment, but I'm not a genius at it. I've got lots of other things to do. I'd love to hand that over to someone who's passionate about PR and social media. If you're good at it, it's really easy for you. I know that because I've worked with people like that before, and we'd love to have you on the team to help us do that. The partner programs I've just talked to you about, all of those take time to set up, but they all take time to drive too. And so if you're passionate about running some sort of partner program, like running the solar program or running the heat pump get off gas program, and finding someone to help us do that, we've got conversations happening with pretty well every one of those programs, but it's always the same people doing it. What we'd love is to have someone to own a particular program. So if you're passionate about getting off gas and you want to run that, we'd love to have your help and love you to be part of doing that. I mentioned Stephen and his Dramana solar farm. He's a developer. That farm is what he calls shovel ready. It's ready to go, but he wants to make it open for the community to invest in it. And there are other community projects that we can do across the peninsula too, that give us the opportunity, as I said, to have more community involved, more investors involved, more people involved for greater emissions impact. But we desperately need someone to run those projects and to build an army around them. So the community investment raised for the Dramana solar farm is ready to go. We just don't have anyone to lead it right now. So if you're passionate about doing something like that, and we've got the models, we've got help, we've got support, we know exactly how to do it, we've got contracts, we've got everything. We just need manpower or woman power, person power to effectively drive helping launch that solar farm with Stephen. We'd love to hear from you. There'll be some people that absolutely love that, especially if you're in finance or been in finance before, or investment raises. This is perfect for you. Or maybe you know someone, then we'd love to have you be part of that with us. We're looking for postcode satellite group leaders and members. So if you are in a postcode and you think like, well, I can't do any of these things, Jim, they're all too much, but do you know what? I'd love to do a little bit more than my own personal actions. I'd love to be part of the Mount Martha group, or the Balnarin group, or the Shoreham group, or the Rye group. Come back to us, let us know, or fill in the website, because you can just let us know there, and we'll put you in touch with that satellite group, and then you can turn up to the monthly meetings, and you can choose to do as much or as little as you want at a local postcode level. Equally, you could also choose to be the leader of those postcode groups as well. And then lastly, we're always looking for financial partners. Maybe you've got no time, but I guess God has given you the gift of making money, let's put it that way, or you're in a retired place and you've got some funds that you can gift. Then anything that you can do to help us would be great. Some people give time, some people give skills, some people give funds. We've all got different gifts to give. And if you have the ability to do that, we'd love to talk to you, because we're doing this on a smell of an oily rag. And to be able to reach 200,000 people across the peninsula, 10,000 businesses, to bring groups of businesses together to do things in industrial hubs, all takes time, all takes money, and marketing and running events, etc. And all takes money. I estimate that really we need about 50,000 a year to really get this thing going, and we're currently on about 10 to 15. So we need to up our financial commitment to keep us running. Okay, that's it. Sorry, I'm not sure how long I went for. What's the time? 8 o'clock. Sorry, probably about 40 minutes. It's probably a bit too long. I hope you got a lot out of that, and I can see a whole lot of questions. So back to you, Lisa.
Thanks, everyone. Jim, one of the things you mentioned about getting involved, if joining our Facebook group and participating in the survey are really powerful. They seem like small actions, but the council and our relationship, we have a really good relationship with the council, and they actually take notice of numbers. So when we have, I can't remember exactly how many respondents we had last time to our survey, it was in the many, many hundreds. And we take that information to council, and for them, that's the voice of the community speaking. So all those little things really make a difference as well. Jim, one of the things that always comes up in these town halls is about holiday homes. And I know the Peninsula in general has a low proportion of solar uptake to other communities partly because of the high incidence of holiday homes. Have you got any thoughts around how we might help people in our streets who own holiday houses get on board with that program? And is there any way for us to monitor? We've got great data now on the postcodes, but the percentage of renewable energy uptake. Do we have those measures for our postcode data?
So Warwick, do you want to speak to the holiday homes? Just so there's a different voice.
Jim, would you mind stopping sharing your screen, please?
Of course.
So we can see everyone a little bit better. Thank you.
Good idea. Well done.
Yeah, look, there's two big challenges. Well, amongst the many challenges, but there's two big challenges that are particular to the peninsula. One is the number of holiday homes, and the other is the number of rentals down here. So it's something that I've been putting a lot of thought into, because there are resources out there. For example, a landlord can actually get the same, there's the capacity for anybody, as long as they meet the threshold that the government sets for getting the rebates for putting solar on your home. Anyone that meets that is also able to get interest-free loan from the state government to put a 4 kilowatt system on their roof. Now, that's also available to landlords. It's a bit more complex, and the way it works, so the way it works, if you're a homeowner, as you save money from having the solar on your roof, you pay back the loan at no interest. So there's certainly that capacity, but 4 kilowatts for our goals isn't enough. We want 6 or 7 or 8 and it's a much better amount of solar to have to actually balance your usage. So hopefully at some stage we'll have a nicely articulated proposition for landlords to actually take advantage of that, dip into their own funds to actually maybe upgrade that to 6.5 or 7 or 8 kilowatts on the roof, and then look at some sort of a negotiation with tenants that gives a benefit to tenants, probably only a small one for the few years over the 4 or 5 year period that the infrastructure is being paid off. And then once it's paid off, there would be a significant benefit to landlord and tenant. So, but I mean, that's something that needs a lot more thought at this stage. As far as the holiday homes that people living in Melbourne, who might just pop down here for 6, 8, 10 weeks of the year, that's a bigger challenge. Into the future, though, if we can get things like virtual energy networks up and running, Jim was talking about the idea that if you've got excess solar on your roof, Fred down the road has got big trees overshadowing his house. There's no point in putting solar on the roof because they just won't work. Then if you've got this household sitting there with all that roof generating electricity, you can be selling it and actually making some money on your holiday property while you're not there, selling it into that virtual energy network to other people who don't have the capacity to have solar, or to renters who can't put solar panels on their roof, but who could buy their power from you. So that's a couple of ideas, but it's certainly into the future thinking. We're not really working to target those holiday homes and rentals just yet. We will get there though, with help.
Jim,
And
can I make a quick comment, if that's all right? Sorry, everyone, I was later. A bit of an emergency and unexpected. Anyway, and I also wanted to show off my merch that arrived quickly after I put in my order just on Tuesday. So I just wanted to add actually to what Warwick's just said. So I actually own a place that I was renting out as holiday accommodation. And I tell you, when people rent from you, they don't care how much power they use. I mean, they just go absolutely berserk. They leave the air conditioning on all the time. They, have the heating on full blast. Now, I'm not saying that everyone that uses their holiday homes always rents them out, or maybe when they go down, they don't necessarily really exploit the utilities. But I think there is a case to be made, particularly for the large number of Airbnb and those kind of places, to actually have a look at the costings around it, because potentially as electricity prices go up, one's investment is not going to have as much a return as originally it did. And I think also, if we look at the other side of the coin, where maybe you have people with a lot of net worth who have big places down on the peninsula that they only use occasionally, they also going to have their fridges running. There's still going to be ongoing costs, just keeping the basics there. And when they come down, they're going to need to use electricity then. And even if they don't care about the financing part of it, then we can certainly appeal to that need to make a change in terms of decarbonisation and moving towards a renewable future. So I think there are some options, and we haven't spent a lot of time talking about that, but I think there are possibilities there.
And that's, I mean, one of the difficult things about the cost of utilities at the moment. The upside is that the change to renewables is going to be more rapid. So even though there's only 8% coverage at the moment, it's going to escalate quickly because of that. And Jim, I think we may have had some estimate in the past of what roof coverage would we need to solve the problem. Where are we? I mean, it can all seem so daunting at the moment, but when you look at those postcode data figures and you see we've only covered 8% of our potential roof area, it just seems like a bit of a no-brainer. What kind of levels do we need to really get to make a difference, do you think?
Yeah, so that's a good question. All I know is I think the best case scenarios for percentage of dwellings that have solar rather than percentage of total roof space. And I think the best in Australia are around 60 to 70%, the best communities. So the best we've got on the peninsula is 30%, I think, and the worst is about 17. So if we can get every postcode up to 50%, we're going to be a long way there. But of course, as we do that, the grid decarbonizes anyway. So the grid is meant to be decarbonized by 50% by 2030, I think, or maybe even more now, because of the new initiatives put forward. And so we don't necessarily need as much solar on the rooftops, beyond 60 and 70% as we may think we do, because the grid is decarbonizing as well. Of course, if you do have it on your own rooftop and you've got your own battery or your own EV, you're in control of your own energy much more at a much lower rate than you are if you buy it from decarbonized grid.
And just so everyone knows, Belinda's a champion of the communities in our region in the Mornington Peninsula. So, we're driven by making sure that everyone gets the benefit of this change and no one gets left behind. So we're always considering those communities that can't afford to do it, and making sure there's some way that they can be incorporated and get the benefit of that change, because we don't want them to be left carrying the weight of the profit responsibilities of the energy companies. So it's really important that everybody gets that opportunity to come along for the ride. Doug, yes, we will. We'll record. This presentation is being recorded and we will download it. And often when we have these workshops, we upload them to our YouTube page as well so that you can see old ones there. But we'll circulate that around. We have a monthly newsletter. So if you haven't subscribed, you can get access to that, and links to these kind of things will be on either our Facebook group page or our YouTube channel. Is there anybody who has further questions before we wrap up? Doug's asked, any update on Flinders community battery proposal?
Warwick, do you know?
Oh, yeah. Conversations are still happening. As far as, I guess it depends where you were with your knowledge, where the process was up to. Basically, the Flinders feasibility study has been done and it's been reviewed. And it's been deemed to be worthwhile. The federal government made their commitment to the battery during the election campaign, and there has been a negotiation with United Energy, because one of the things that has to be worked through is the financial viability of things like community batteries. And it really, the message is they really need to be funded by government or by some philanthropic organisation to make them cost effective for a community. And there's been, because, and I won't go into all the detail, but basically the network charges are set by government legislation. They can only be varied in a pilot or a trial that the energy company agrees to and then gets permission to run. The problem there is if their pilot is reducing energy transmission costs, network charges, after 2 years, they might decide that, well, we can't do that anymore. So therefore, the financial benefit of having the battery may end up being not wonderful. So the environmental benefit is always there. I mean, if we're able to store our energy and then reuse it later, then obviously there is that climate payoff. But there's a fair bit of work that needs to happen in this space for governments to actually look at the legislation to make things like batteries worthwhile for communities long term. And particularly if there's the idea that a community is actually going to raise money locally to buy a battery, there certainly would need to be a very good case that it was going to be financially worthwhile to do that. So with the Flinders battery, they've had the commitment of the battery, and they've got an arrangement with United Energy that will make it worthwhile to the community to have the battery there, and don't know any more about timelines though.
Is the feasibility study results, are they public now? I know I've seen them, but are they
I don't
released to the
believe
public?
they've been released publicly yet.
Okay, so we'll have that on our socials when they're released publicly, Doug, so you can follow that way. Jim, did you want to do a final quick go through of the website just to show quick navigation? And then
Just for a couple of minutes, if
Yep.
that's helpful for people, just shows where we're at. Some of the things I mentioned earlier. So can you see it now?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So this is the homepage, of course, which you've hopefully all seen. If you want to take the survey, you can do that here. If you want to get to the dashboards, you go here. If you want to take personal action, takes you here. And then there's a few other bits and bobs. If you go to the bottom of every page on the whole website's got the same footer, so you can get connected, you can send us an update, tell us you want to join a postcode group, run it, do whatever, ask us a question. If you want to become a member, make a donation, join a group, you can do all that here. If you want to buy a t-shirt, cap, sticker, look just like Belinda, you can do that here. So that's the place to find it, just there. The personal actions, if you haven't been to this is things that you can do individually. So, for your own household, home and car, with some stories. Then there's a small business, and then there's a community organization. So there's a whole series of actions there, and there are the kind of 5 key areas we talked about. And these are all the links that take you to the different government rebates and different things. And if we've got a program, then this will also link you to that program. So the partner programs, here are the ones that we talked about. So Solar My Home and Business, this has gone live today. A few changes coming to make it look a bit cleaner, but other than that, you can see here that we've got Dunton Group, Solar and Electrical, tells you about them, the services they offer. So residential, commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, electrical vehicle charging. So you want to do any of those things, you press that button there. And it's the same with South Beach. They do residential, commercial, corporation, school and kinder solar. You press that button there, and either button will take you to the same form. And here's the form, request a solar quote discussion. You fill in your details. What are you interested in? Solar, battery, hot water, pool heating, EV charging? Do you own the roof? What type of roof, type of installation? Upload your bill if you want to, you don't have to. Who do you want to get a quote from? Both or one of them? Submit it. You'll get an email back. They'll send an email to them. We also see that, so we can chase them if you don't hear from them. And you should get a call back within, as soon as possible, hopefully. And that's the way to go. So you can also recommend and refer other people. If they're not sure who to go with, you can just say, go to the Repower site and check it out. They've got some recommended providers. This is more detail about the local community pledge with some details about the $50 per kilowatt I told you about. This shows you how we do it, how we manage the installation. So if you've got any more questions around that sort of community trust fund, you can find it there. Another program is the energy efficiency programs. This is with Green Moves. So there's 2 programs, home and business. So if we go to the home, here you can basically do a series of scorecard assessments. Are you a 2-bedroom home, a 3 or 4-bedroom home? Are you renovating or building? And then you've got different scorecards. So let's just say you're a 3-bedroom home. You want to get an assessment and a scorecard done. Again, you fill in your details there. You say what you're looking for. You write some comments and say, I'm not really sure, can you help me, Danielle? Submit it, and Danielle will give you a call, and then you can talk about it. There's no obligation on any of these things. It's just making sure that we'll give you the option to go with a recommended provider. And then the same with the business. Maybe you're a small business or a non-profit and you're less than 1,000 square meters, or you're a medium-sized business like a winery and you want a detailed audit. And of course, there's much more specific quoting associated with that. Again, you go to the same form, or slightly different form, but a form, and Danielle will get back to you. And then we will be launching a renewable energy partner program in the near future, just here. So, and as I mentioned, the other 3 or 4 providers that we'll be going with soon, you'll start to see this fill out more, and you'll hear about it more and more and more in our newsletters. So that gives you a quick view of where you can find everything.
Thanks, Jim. And I think that's really useful. And lots of the people that we surveyed, one of the main results that we got back from the survey was that people didn't know what to do. The information was too complex, too tricky. They didn't know where to start. So in developing our website, what we've really tried to do is make it as simple for people as possible, and not to be daunted. You just click and get a quote, and a local reputable company who we recommend will come out and give you some of the answers to your questions, no obligation required. So if you've got people who are a bit hesitant and say, I don't know where to start, there's some really good, quick, easy links, including to rebates and funding on the website. That's hopefully useful for everyone. Thanks everyone for your time, unless you've got another question.
Lisa, sorry. Can I just mention, I'm coordinating the establishment of the postcode-based, or sometimes combination of postcode. Red Hill is actually Red Hill, Main Ridge, Arthur Seat, because they saw themselves as the one sort of family up there. If you are interested to know if there's a postcode satellite group in your area, or we've got a few areas like Shoreham, for example, where there's a couple of people interested in getting involved in setting one up. But it would be fantastic to have a couple more people to build a team of 4 to work on launching that satellite group in Shoreham or wherever. Please just drop me an email through the contact us message on box on the website, and I'll drop your phone number in there. I'll give you a call and have a chat about what your options are and what's happening in your community already, if anything.
So really quickly, Warwick, the groups that are already up and running, Rice,
Okay.
Rento, Blackgowrie.
So we've got up and running and functional is Mount Martha, Red Hill, Rye, which includes the Southern Peninsula, and Flinders. Raring to go with plans for a launch event, Balnarring, Mornington and Martha Cove, and places where there's been a bit of interest but nothing's actually moving a great deal on the ground yet is Shoreham, Rosebud and Tyab, Somerville. So yeah, so there's and when you look at those, like Balnarring is Balnarring, Merricks North and Summits. So when you look at that, we're probably already covering more, well and truly, 50% of the peninsula, particularly when Mornington gets up and running. That's a big slab of the population. So hopefully it won't be too long before we can fairly comfortably say that we've got the peninsula covered, but we certainly could do with talking to some people over Hastings, Crib Point Way. Rosie, did you say you were Shoreham? No.
No, I'm in Mount Martha.
You're in Mount Martha. Someone,
Sorry, I'm scratching my head.
sorry, I actually, someone mentioned, anyway, it doesn't matter. If you'd like to learn more, or if you just want to ask a quick question right now, please do so.
And each of those groups has between 5 and 25 kind of active members. So there's a kind of groundswell of happening out there who are the real hands on the ground people. So it's fantastic in getting stuff done in their local community, which is exactly how we want it to work. Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Spread the word, and we'll send you a link afterwards. Thanks for attending. Have a lovely evening, and you know how to contact us through the website if you have any further questions that pop up along the way. Thanks very much.
Lovely to meet you all.
Love to meet you all. See you.